Hey everyone, and welcome back to episode 289 of The Explainer. We're calling this one Everything Looked Fine. This is your AI, privacy, and security weekly update for the week ending April 27th, 2026. I'm really pumped to have you here because, well, we've got a wild lineup today. We're diving into stories where the digital surface looked, perfectly secure and totally normal. But underneath, the foundation was practically crumbling. We're going to look at exactly how and why things that appeared completely fine actually weren't.
To really set the stage for what we're looking at today, I want you to think about this absolutely chilling description of a newly analyzed piece of malware. It hits the nail on the head for our theme. We are way past the days of just smash and grab data theft, right? Now we're talking about incredibly subtle, hidden vulnerabilities, silent sabotage that completely warps reality, all while making us believe everything is working exactly the way it's supposed to. So, Act 1, Everyday Trust Broken. Let's start with the tools we blindly trust every single day. Take encrypted messaging. Signal is pretty much the gold standard for privacy, right? But here's the kicker. A breakdown in the background infrastructure totally bypassed all that top-tier security. Users obviously expect their disappearing messages to actually disappear. But what really happened was a bug in Apple's push notification database kept fragments of those encrypted messages sitting out in the open for up to a month. Get this, according to 404 Media, the FBI literally extracted these retained messages from an iPhone in a recent case long after the Signal app itself had been totally deleted from the phone. Apple did push a patch to fix it, but it's a huge wake-up call. Your ultra-secure app? Yeah, it's really only as safe as the operating system it's running on. Now let's scale things up from our pockets to national infrastructure. Look at this massive number, 19 million. The French government's identity database looked like an absolute fortress from the outside. Everything looked fine. But hackers, going by the name Breach3D, somehow managed to expose up to 19 million ID, passport, and driver's license records. What makes this so wild is that officials think this breach exploited repeated systemic vulnerabilities. A really similar data set actually surfaced back in 2025. It just points to these massive unresolved weaknesses in the government's digital foundation. The front door was locked tight, but the walls were basically made of Swiss cheese. And speaking of the walls having holes, let's talk about the password manager Bitwarden. They had a massive scare recently, but it wasn't your typical attack. Hackers didn't try to crack Bitwarden users' actual vaults. Instead, they pulled off a supply chain attack. So instead of kicking down the front door, they went straight for the plumbing. A malicious command line tool was briefly sneaked into the NPM registry, which is essentially a giant hub where developers go to download code packages. They weren't targeting you directly. They were targeting the developers building the tools you use. So what is the big upshot for you in Act 1? It all comes down to this idea of leaky digital plumbing. Look, most of us never install command line developer tools, and you probably aren't thinking about Apple's push notification logs when you shoot a quick Signal text to a friend. But we all completely rely on software that sits on top of this invisible infrastructure. Modern attacks are increasingly just ignoring that heavily guarded front door and targeting the deep, unseen supply chains and OS logs instead. It honestly perfectly explains why hitting update on routine software patches is absolutely essential, even if it's always a little nerve-wracking to actually do it. Moving right along to Act 2, the silent sabotage. Let's look at how this escalates from simple data leaks to something way more deliberate. Remember that quote about the bent ruler I mentioned earlier? Well, Sentinel Labs recently took a look at an older rootkit driver called fast16.sys. This thing actually predates Stuxnet. But instead of stealing files, this malware just sat there and waited for precision engineering and scientific software to load up. If you looked at the hard drive, everything seemed normal, untouched. But the second the software was loaded into the computer's memory, boom, the malware started altering complex calculations right on the fly. It literally distorted real-world engineering outcomes without ever throwing an error or announcing itself. It just quietly changed the math while making the entire system look totally fine. And guys, this kind of stealthy background manipulation, it is only going to speed up. Researchers and hackers are literally using AI systems now to attack and break other AI systems. We're completely moving past the era of slow, manual, human security testing. AI is automating the flaw-finding process at blinding machine speeds. It's creating this wild, continuous loop where AI is playing both the attacker and the defender at the exact same time. The technology that's building our future is being stress-tested way faster than humans can even comprehend. And no one is immune to this. Even the most highly restricted, cutting-edge AI environments are getting caught in the crossfire. Take this unauthorized private Discord group that just breached Anthropic's top-secret, unreleased Mythos model. How they do it? Not with some massive brute force attack. Nope. They just cleverly layered access from a third-party contractor, mixed it with standard open-source internet sleuthing, and made some really smart, educated guesses based on data that had leaked from a totally different AI startup called Mercor. It was basically a jigsaw puzzle of tiny little vulnerabilities. Put them all together, and they created a backdoor right into one of the most advanced models on the planet. The funny part? The group claimed they didn't even want to wreak havoc. They just wanted to build simple websites without Anthropic noticing.
Which brings us to the upshot for Act 2. Attackers aren't just trying to steal your data or lock up your laptop anymore. They are literally sitting quietly in the background, specifically to alter the outputs. Whether they're bending a digital ruler in engineering software or probing unreleased AI models in the shadows, they are making accuracy itself the ultimate target. All right, let's shift gears to Act 3, the corporate and political facade, because these illusions of stability don't just exist in computer code. They happen in human partnerships and government offices too. Let's look at the U.S. government's new Center for AI Standards and Innovation. They brought in Colin Burns, a major industry veteran with experience at both OpenAI and Anthropic, to be the main bridge between the government and the AI industry. Sounds great, right? Well, he started the job on a Monday. By Thursday, he was gone, pushed out. According to the Washington Post, the ouster came down to political friction between the administration and his former employer, Anthropic. Former administration AI advisor Dean Ball actually weighed in on this, pointing out that Burns had given up valuable stock and moved all the way across the country for this role, only to be hit by what Ball called a dumb but predictable own goal. On paper, this new AI office looked totally ready to bridge the gap with Silicon Valley. In reality, the political foundation couldn't even hold for a week. Now, over on the corporate side, another seemingly unbreakable facade has totally shifted. The legendary Microsoft and OpenAI partnership, it's been radically reworked. The old deal was completely exclusive and open-ended. It basically forced absolute dependency. But look at this new deal. They've completely overhauled one of the biggest partnerships in tech history. Revenue share payments to Microsoft are now capped. But the real kicker here is that OpenAI now has the optionality to go out and court massive cloud competitors like Amazon and Google. The whole exclusivity thing, it's gone. So the takeaway for Act 3 is that we're seeing this huge shift from total dependency to optionality. In today's AI economy, controlling the underlying corporate and political partnerships is honestly just as important, if not more important, than controlling the actual tech. If the partnership starts to crack, the technology pipeline is going right down with it. And that brings us to Act 4, the invisible AI future. Everything we've covered today is about to get way more personal. All those background vulnerabilities, the silent sabotage, the shifting backroom deals, they are about to become deeply embedded in our everyday lives. We are rapidly moving away from just occasionally asking an AI a random question and moving toward a world of always-on digital companions. AI is shifting from being just an app you open to a continuous layer of your operating system. It'll have persistent memory, it will know your environmental context. It's not just going to wait around for a prompt anymore, it's going to actively evolve with you in the background, persistently managing your tasks and your information all day long. A perfect example of this is the rise of these new agent browsers, like Interceptor. Think about traditional browsing. You are firmly in the driver's seat, right? You click the mouse, you type the keys, you decide exactly where to navigate. But with agent browsers, the software itself is an autonomous entity. It does the navigating, the clicking, the automating of entire workflows completely on your behalf. The web browser is no longer just a static window you stare through. It's becoming a silent assistant, acting for you, right under the hood. So, as we wrap up this explainer on systems that look perfectly fine on the surface but hide some wild complexity and vulnerability underneath, I want to leave you with one final thought. When our entire digital world inevitably shifts to autonomous software that seamlessly clicks, types, and basically supervises our lives in the background, who is actually in control? Thanks so much for joining me for this week's update, and I will catch you all in the next explainer.